Yeah, we're due to have a guest speaker. David Coulter's going to do a session, and I think he's trying to join right now. The trouble is he's had technical issues. We've not done any prep whatsoever, any technical stuff. So I don't know whether it's working or not. So I think, and I think Sarah's listening, and David might be on the Zoom call somewhere. I think we might have to bring David back next week or the week after for that session, just because we didn't get the tech working. So the alternative is I could bring David on now and we can play around, do a tech check and stuff, but that could be 30 seconds, it could be 3 minutes, it could be 3 hours, we just never know. So so what we're going to do today, think on our feet, is these are badged as Q&A sessions where I answer your questions with the software. We normally have a theme where I'll show you something for 10-20 minutes, but I haven't got a theme set up and planned. I could make something up, but actually, as I always say, my priority here is to just answer your questions. What do you want to know about the effective pricing software? And I'll answer them as best I can. Alice has asked a question straight away. So let me deal with that one. But yeah, let me know what you want to know. What do you want to cover in this session today? I'm here to help you as best I can. If you don't ask me a question, then I can't help you. And we have lots of people here. And if it's, I think I said not last week, it was Easter last week. 2 weeks ago, I know we had a lot of questions that were not software related. So I said, look, can we just keep it to the software questions? Because there's no theme for today, then I'm happy for things slightly off topic with value pricing if you want, but I will give priority to those questions. Also, if anybody is here via the Facebook group, then please ask your questions there as well. I'm just checking. Nobody asked questions there. So let's dive in. Let's get started. We've got a question from Alistair. And he says, and if you hear that background noise, that's Sarah, can you just communicate with David and just say, I'm not letting him in just because we've not tested and we're live now. And I don't know that I want to do a test while we're live because it might be awkward for him. So probably best just to reschedule. Alistair says, what are the top 5 keywords that actually sell bookkeeping and accounting services? Are they the same top 5 between those fields? Okay, so that's, I guess that's a question not to do with the effective pricing software, Alistair. But I will answer it because I've only got one other question at the moment, which is Jean. So what are the top 5 keywords that actually sell bookkeeping and accounting services? I actually don't know off the top of my head. You'd need to do some keyword research, I think, and there's lots of ways of doing that. Something that if you're in the Value Pricing Academy, at some point we can teach that on Marketing Monday about keyword research. What's the best way of doing it? I mean, there's lots of things that you could do. So doing it with research, with Google and with YouTube. So a lot will depend on what sort of themes you're looking for. So if it's bookkeeping, you could type into the YouTube search or the Google search, you could type the phrase bookkeeping. And what happens is it then starts to fill in and extend that with what are common things that people type when they type in bookkeeping. It might come with how to do bookkeeping or how to find a bookkeeper. And that's how you do it, Alice. You just have to play around. There are tools and things that you can buy as well that can help with keyword research. So I'm guessing that question, Alice, was all about SEO. And given that's nothing to do with pricing, if that's okay, I'm going to move on to some pricing questions and software questions. So we have Jean Austin is here. Hiya, Jean, hope you're well. Can I send a proposal to a customer that shows them 3 options and prices for each? Yes. Yes, you can. So one of the things that I've even set up for you is a one-page proposal. You really want to be using the software, Jean, in front of the client. You should be showing it to the client. But yes, you can, if you want to print something out that shows them what your 3 options are and what the prices are for each, then absolutely, yes, you can do that. And so let me just quickly show you where to find that in the software. So if you go to and I just need to log in again. There we go. Okay, when you go into proposal templates, so I'm in the settings, that's the cogwheel. When you click on the cogwheel, the proposal templates is everything to do with managing your proposals. I've got loads here set up because I've been testing and all sorts, but what you'll have is, you should see at the bottom of your list, there should be 3: payment plan, draft proposal, fixed price agreement. So I've created 3 for you so far. We will create some more at some point in the future. So there's 3 here so far. And so the ones I've set up is, there's the draft proposal. If I just click on that for now, that's going to, what it does, when you click on it, it clones it, so it becomes your copy, your template, and you can rename it if you want to. It defaults by putting a date at the end of it. The date is the date that you've cloned it, so this is right now. So you can change the name if you want. I'll leave that for now. You need to make it live at some point if you want to start using it, but while you're testing it, you can leave it to no. There's various ways of turning it live. You don't have to do it here if you don't want to. I'll hit save and continue. This is where you build it up. So this particular one I have created for you, and it's going to have you, it'll pull in your logo into the top left. So where it says effective pricing, that's where it'll pull in your logo. On the right, it'll put in the proposal, the client's name and the date. You can change that. This is all keywords. Everything here, this pencil icon, you can edit it. So if you want something different in the top right, then there's a text section where I've put for you, this quote is valid for 5 days from whatever the quote date is, the date you do the quote. Again, you can change that wording if you want to. I've just given you a suggestion to get you started. I've put some images in, which are these stars. You could create something else, but that was really just to illustrate, if you want, you can have some headers across your 3 different options, an image, stars, to bronze to represent bronze, silver, gold, etc. Let me turn myself back on so you can see me. You might want to put in a description for who each option is aimed at. So these are just 3 little text boxes that are inserted. And then, and this is the bit I think you're really asking, Gene, I think, is then what it does, it pulls in the 3 packages with the prices. Now, I'm not doing a real quote right now. I'm just in the settings behind the scenes. Whenever you are in managing and editing your proposals in proposal management, when you pull in things like the pricing tables, this is a pricing table, it just pulls in for a preview, the last one that you did. So I obviously did one earlier, which showed these numbers. And then when you hit save and continue, it'll then give you a preview of what yours looks like. So this is what it would look like. So as I said, you can change that. You can have you'll have your logo in the top left. You can change all the wording. You can change these images if you want. You can change the text, the fonts, whatever. But it then pulls in the what you've gone through with the client, the ticks, the crosses, with the prices at the top. So this is a 1-page version. If it doesn't have to be 1 page, I've just created a 1-page one, which you can use, and you can print this out when you first reveal the price to your clients. And so that table there that shows the 3 columns and shows the price for each of your bronze, silver, gold, you can have that in any proposal that you want. When you create a proposal, what you would do, let me just do another one. This is going to duplicate, so forgive me, but when you create a proposal, in fact, I'm going to just be easier, I think, if I hit the delete button, delete that. So if you want that list of ticks, if you want to give somebody a proposal with the 3 options, the bronze, silver, gold, with the prices as well. And by the way, if you've got a model with 2 options or 1 option or 5, it'll be the same thing. It'll just be more columns or less columns. That is pulled in. That information is pulled in, and it's called a pricing table. So what we do is, just bear with me a second. you'll see here on the left-hand side, you've got the elements. The elements are the things that you can build into your quote. So you can bring in a section. Mine's I want a single section, but you can have a 3-column section like the ones above. I've got a single section. When you have a section, you can either make it a text box and you can create text, which we're not going to do here, but if I did, I'd just drag text in. I could just have a big image. I'd pull an image, or I can make it a price table. And there's a whole bunch of options here. And the one that you want is the all packages table. The all packages table will display all of the packages that you've presented to your clients with the prices. And all I do is I drag it in. And it'll just pull in a sample one based on the last quote you did, just so you can see it's pulled it in. But this will then reflect whatever it is that you're pricing, whatever the service is that you've done. So that's the pricing table that you can put into a quote. Now, that's all packages table. The other ones, just to give you a quick review of them, this one here over on the left, I'm wiggling around, that's the payment schedule. So if you want to pull that into your proposal, then you can put in a payment schedule that shows the payments, the monthly payments and the dates. The chosen package table shows a version of what's on the right of the screen. This one just shows the one they've chosen. So if they have selected, let's say, the middle option, it'll just show the middle option and it won't show the price. It'll just show them what they've basically got, the package they've bought. The questions shows them how they've answered the questions, how the price has been arrived at. The enhancements is any upsells they've bought, and the rewards is if there's any behavior rewards. So they are the pricing tables. And what I've also done for you, so let me just go back again, back to these are the 3 at the bottom. So the draft proposal is one I've created for you as a 1-page version of that. And if you go to the bottom one, which is the fixed price agreement, rocket theme, I won't set up another one. I'll just pull in one I've already got because I've got so many of them. If I just hit the edit button, what I've done for you is I've also pulled across a sample proposal that you can use. And in that proposal, in the appendices, I've already pulled in the tables that you will probably want to use. So if I just flick through this one, you'll see there's appendices for the base on which this is the way the questions were answered. So that's one of those pricing tables. This one here is the one that doesn't show the price and shows what they've bought, the package they've selected. And that's what that will look like in a proposal. This is any upsells, enhancements, and it'll say yes or no, which ones they've bought. And that's the only 3 that I've built into this particular one. I think I'd messed around with this and deleted the behavior awards. Okay, Gina, I hope that helps. That was a long answer, I know, because there weren't many questions in. Now there's loads of questions coming, which is great. So that was a question about proposals. Gina, I hope I answered the question right. If I didn't, just ask it again. Okay, William Long said, on the proposal form, let me just go back to here. On the proposal form, is it possible to change the heading sales tax to VAT? Yes is the answer, William. At least I'm not 100% sure where you're referring to, but sales tax to VAT. I think what you're referring to is this. Let me just go back.
Mark, just interrupting you. William's second question clarifies it's actually on the payment plan. Oh,
good point. And the answer is I don't know now, William. Now you're saying that, that could be something. That could be something that it may or may not change. And I don't know. I've not tested this for a while, so forgive me. I've temporarily forgotten. So the sales tax versus VAT text that you would want to use, you would normally set up in the model itself. So if I go into Cloud Setup, just pick a random model and get to the, oops, you can't see it, sorry. If I go into a model, so I've got here on the left-hand side, the workflow of all the bits and pieces you would set up. Under expressing the price, this is, No, it's me being silly. Hang on, I've just completely forgotten. Oh no, that's right. Yeah, show sales tax, show, and then the text plus VAT. That's what goes after the price. When you reveal the price and move to the enhancements page, it will show the price plus whatever text you put in there. Now that you could add plus VAT, plus GST, plus sales tax, plus expenses. You can have whatever text you want actually afterwards. It's just normally you put plus VAT, plus sales tax, plus GST, but you can be creative if you want to show the price in another way. But actually the question you're asking, William, is, does that pull through on the payment plan? And I don't know is the answer. We've got a meeting with the developers on Monday, because we're about to make some improvements to proposals. We've got a bunch of stuff that's we're going to be building in, which I'm really looking forward to telling you what we're going to build in. I'll check that one out and we'll come back to you. So Sarah, can you make a note of that? It may be that I just can't remember. It may be that that's what I've shown you is how you change it, but it may be that there's something in the payment plan that doesn't allow you to change it. So we'll sort that out for you, William. Okay. Nancy says, if your offering is a full-on outsized finance department where you manage everything from HR up to 50 employees, accounting services, strategy and forecasting, all in one, do you recommend building a plan that combines a number of your plans into one big plan? Okay, that's a great question. One that I get quite a lot. If it's a full outsourced finance, I would normally recommend that the key things, the main components of what you price separately. You price separately. Sarah, I've still got David trying to call in. Can you contact David? I'm happy to let him in. It's just that we haven't done a tech check and we're live, and so I don't want to embarrass him if things go horribly wrong. So Nancy says, should we? What I would do is, and I'm just looking at your list here. So HR, accounting services, strategy, forecasting. I would normally do them separately, and the reason for that is partly because. And I've got one on the floor, and partly because you might want to use brochures to build up the value, and therefore you might want to spend a bit of time in the value conversation. David's still trying to join. You might want to talk about and build the value of your accounting services, and then talk about the value of your forecasting, and then the value of your strategy. So, in other words, you want to build the value of each element separately, because all of those things that you're talking about are really valuable things. And if you try to kind of rush it, you will end up possibly not properly selling it and building up the value. Now, when you then come to do the price, the reason why you might want to consider pricing separate models is partly because it then breaks the price down to maybe, for example, you price each element and you've got your HR, your accounting, strategy, and your forecasting. And it might be the client says, that's just way too expensive. Thinking about it, if we drop off the HR and leave that perhaps till next year, we'll go with the other three. So it gives the client a bit more choice over the different components. They can see how the price of each one builds up, and then they can make a decision if they want all four of those things as their full-on outsourcing function or not. They can choose. There's another reason from a kind of practical point of view is when you are pricing, you want to make sure that you fully consider all of those scope factors, but also the preference factors. And so you want to ask the scope questions, you want to ask the right preference questions. If you have complex services, and I would say that looking at the ones you've got on your list, Nancy, that the accounting services are complex. There's with accounting services, there's lots of scope issues, lots of preferences, things we could look at. Forecasting, again, there's probably lots of questions and things we could ask about to find exactly what sort of forecasting do they want. Do they want profit forecasting only, or cash flow forecasting, or do they want profit and cash flow modeling, or do they want three-way forecasting, which is, where you forecast the profit, the cash implications, and the balance sheet, and that's more complex. You need software to do that. And so with forecasting, there's lots of choices. There's lots of different things we can consider. Strategy, another thing. There's a huge amount of different things to think about with strategy. And so if I just go back to, let me just go back to here for a second, because it will hopefully help to illustrate a little bit. I'm just going to go into the settings, and I'm going to go, let's just take one of these models. So let's just take forecast, because you mentioned that as part of an outsourced finance department. So if I go into the forecasting model, if I was pricing forecasting, then just to give you a flavor of some of the questions you might want to ask, some of the things you might want to consider when you're pricing forecasting is, you might want to ask, well, why do you want the forecast in the first place? Is it to obtain finance? Is it a new product launch? Is it COVID-19 support? Is it a management tool? Why do you want it? And the reason for that is because the reason why somebody wants something might impact on how much they value it or their willingness to pay. So you might want to use that as a way of building in the price. It might be that if they want the forecasting because they're looking for a grant, some funding, COVID-19 support, for example, then you might want to price based on that. So somebody where they want to forecast because they could get a £20,000 or dollar grant funding, you might have a lower price than someone where they can get 200,000, because with value pricing, remember, if you can help somebody with your forecast get a bigger result, then the value is higher, you can charge a higher price. So you might want to ask a question about how much funding can they get as a result of the forecast. You might want to ask, certainly how many years worth. Now, in your case, if it's an outsourced finance department, it might be a rolling forecast. Is it a three-way forecast? Is it cash flow only? Because these have a big impact on how much work you've got to do. A cash flow or profit only is relatively straightforward because there's no double entry, if you like. But when you get to fully integrated, you've got a three-way forecast, it's more complex. Then, of course, when we're looking at forecasts, we might want to let the client choose where they want to model different accounts receivable or different accounts payable. Do they want to model their stock or inventory levels? What about modeling and stuff with foreign currency transactions? Do they want to break down their forecasts into different cost centers? So there's a lot of questions that you can answer, both scope questions and preference questions, just with forecasting alone. So Nancy, this is a long way of getting to the point. If you combine the accounting services, the HR, the strategy, and the forecasting into one pricing model, you either have to keep it relatively simple, i.e., a smaller subset of questions for each, or you risk really overcomplicating things. So in other words, let's say that you are taking those four things again. If you want to price forecasting and you realize, there's 3 scope questions I want, there's 5 choices I can give people, and I've given you some suggestions on the screen just now. If you're pricing accounting services, there might be 5 or 6 scope questions, and then there might be another 2 or 3 choices you give them, like do you want it done fast or slow? Then when you think about HR and all the scope questions there and so on, you could end up with a lot of scope questions, a lot of preference questions, and the more questions that you have built into your model, the more questions you've got, firstly, the longer it takes to get to the point where you give the client a price. Secondly, potentially, depending on your internet connection and your computer, it could slow things down because there's more calculations. And I think the most important, thirdly, is that the more questions you have in a model, the more you have to test, because there's more different permutations of and you may end up, there's an increasing chance that you build something in that's going to create an error somewhere. One of the most common ones is people multiplying by 0, and then it wipes everything, it just brings everything back to 0. So the more complex your model, the more likely things can go wrong. So that's not to say, Nancy, you definitely can't do that. You can create one model if you want for outsourced finance department that includes all those elements. It's just going to mean that you either overcomplicate your model, or you end up simplifying the questions and therefore missing out on some potentially important questions if you were to price them all separately. I don't know if that helps or not, Nancy. That was I know that's again a long answer, but I think it's a question I get frequently from people about, should I price? Can I combine lots of things together? And one of the things that Teresa, I know you're next. I'm coming up to your question, but just one final point, and I will show you. You might not be aware of this. I will show it. If you are doing that, if you are combining multiple things, let me just go into the back end for now. So if I go into model management, and let me just pick, I'll just pick the forecasting one. It doesn't really matter which one I pick. So the first section is all of your questions. And as you can see, you can break down the questions into different sections. So I had that first page of questions was, what's the primary purpose of the forecast? How much grant could you be entitled to? How far into the future? How many years do you want to forecast? And then there's those other preference questions of, do you want me to model accounts receivable, etc. So there were 2 pages of questions I showed you at the front end. That's because there's 2 sections. Now remember, and this is really important to remember, the calculations, what is done, the order of the math, the order of the calculations is done in the order of the questions. Okay, so each question builds and builds and builds. And so if the very last question is a question that's a multiplier, where let's say the last question is a yes, no, do you want this, yes or no? And you decide that if they say yes, you add on 10% or times by 1.1, what that will do is multiply everything calculated up to that point in time by 1.1. It'll multiply everything by 1.1. And if you're pricing multiple services in one model, it might be you only want that question, that yes or no multiplied by 1.1 by 10%, only to apply to the 3 questions before that about that specific model. And the way to get around that with the software is that's what isolate is, this tick box here. What isolate does is it effectively puts parentheses, like you would in an Excel spreadsheet, in an Excel formula. Isolate effectively puts parentheses around that section of questions, calculates it in isolation, and then adds it to the previous section. And so what I'm saying, if you do want to price multiple services into one model, yes, you can do it. Be aware of the things I said earlier, the warnings of overcomplicating, but yes, you can do it. And my advice would be, if you're going to do that, so Nancy, if you're going to do HR, accounting, strategy, and forecasting in one model, I would put each of those 4 as a separate section in the software and then hit the isolate. So you can do little calculations for just the forecasting bit, which will then add to the previous. Okay, that was, I said, it's a long answer, but I know it's one that people ask all the time about, could I price each thing separately or in one model? And I think there may have been a part 2 to that, Nancy, and go over each one in the same pricing meeting. So let's just pick up on that and then I'll answer Teresa's question. So here's the reason why I believe that people like to price everything at once. They want to price the HR, the accounting services, the forecasting, the strategy in one meeting. The reason why we tend to want to do that is because usually we're in a bit of a rush. We want to hurry things. We want to get the client signed up. We've got this great meeting with a great client. The client's really keen to meet us, and we're so excited about the possibility. We want to get them signed up today. Let's do it now. Let's sign them up. Let's go through things as quick as we can. Go through all the various things so we can get them signed up. And the problem with that is, if you rush things, you can't properly build up the value. That's why I suggest, if you've got separate brochures for each element, go through each service separately. Build up the value properly. You don't want to rush things, particularly with something big like that, Nancy, where it's outsourced finance services. I don't know, that could be, I'm guessing, but that could be a $10,000, £20,000 dollar client a year. That's a big fee. 10, 20 grand a year recurring would be a big fee. And so why try to rush it when this could be 5, 10 years worth of income? This could be over 10 years, this could be £250,000 at stake. So why rush it? And so think about breaking down into, if the client doesn't have a time for a 3-hour meeting, break it down into a series of meetings. And the first one, as well as doing the things like the fact find I talk about and stuff, you might decide that you focus on what's the most pressing thing right now. Let's get the accounting services set up right now, because that's the thing you said is the most important. Let's get that sorted out. Let's get that priced. And then if there's time, we can look at strategy and forecasting. We can do those as well. And we'll do it in this meeting if you want to. I've got time if you have. But alternatively, we could fix another meeting in a couple of weeks. We can get started on the pressing stuff, get that agreed and done, and then we can meet again in a few weeks' time. That's what I would do. I wouldn't try to sell everything straight away in the first meeting. Okay, let's move on. Teresa, you said, hi Mark, in the all package table, does it show the discounted prices if we have given them behavior rewards? No. I say no. Again, it's one of those things, I've not actually tested it properly because no one's asked that question before. I don't think it will. And the reason for that is because that table showing the prices was created because people were saying to us, when we give the prices and the client doesn't want to make a decision, they're not ready to make a decision yet, they just want to go away and think about it. That's why we go to the table, so you can have that report to give to people if they need to go away and think about it. The behavior rewards and the enhancements would come afterwards once they're ready. I think the enhancements definitely that wouldn't be added on. But you've caught me out there, Tracy. You've asked a question that's yeah, you've stumped me now because I'm not actually 100% sure. So I'm not going to waffle any more. We'll Sarah, make a note. We'll find out the answer to that one. Give you the proper answer. I don't think is the answer. I don't think it includes the discounted prices. I don't think, but we'll check. If it doesn't, and you want to have a one-page report that shows the prices and then the discounts, I guess you could probably then add another pricing table. It would obviously spill into a second page, so it wouldn't be a one-page report anymore, but you could then put that other table of behavior rewards and have a heading that says, we also discussed some things that you can do to make life a bit easier that would result in a lower fee. Just a reminder, here are the things that we looked at, and then it pulls in all the different behavior rewards and where they answered yes or no. And then what you can do, and this is what I do, this is what I would do, is when you do behavior rewards, you can fill in a description, and I would put in the description something like, if you agree to pay us early, we reduce the price by 10%. You get a 10% discount. Okay, but Sarah, make a note of that because I want to look into that now. Teresa's got me curious. Jean says, to follow up on Nancy's question, so I might have answered this already because that was a long answer. Jean says, I think the solution and challenge from an app development standpoint is to have separate proposals, but one unified pricing schedule for the customer that combines all proposals they have agreed to. Okay, Jean, that's a great point. So I know that another reason why people want to combine it is to have a single proposal, and I get that. Again, there's a trade-off. Okay, it's a trade-off between doing everything in one and risking over complicating your model, risking not building up the value properly, versus the wanting to have everything in one proposal in one. And so, as long as you're aware of that, the software enables you, because you can isolate the sections. The software enables you to price multiple services in one. Again, if it were me, the sorts of things that Nancy suggested, I'd be thinking somebody that wants all that stuff is going to be a 5-figure annual fee, 10 grand upwards. And so if it's going to be a 5-figure fee or more, that's such a big price. I wouldn't be too worried about using the software to create the proposal. If it's a 5-figure fee upwards, and the high, if it's 20, 30 grand a year, I'd want to create some proposal that's really going to be, really impress them. For those of you that are in my Advanced Tuesday group in the Value Pricing Academy, one of the things we do every couple of years is I teach you the perfect proposal system. which we do over 2 months. I forget when we're due to do it next. And one of the things that I do is I walk you through the structure of a perfect proposal, all the key elements that you want. And what we then did a couple of years back is with help from my designer, Stephen, he created an amazingly beautiful proposal template that's done in PowerPoint. So it just looks really, the quality of the if you've ever seen the brochures that he does for my VPA students, then he created a proposal template, and it's absolutely beautiful, and it's in PowerPoint, because the great thing about PowerPoint is you can have a fill in the blank section. So you could have a beautiful page that might be where it talks about the 3 options and whatever, and then it's got some text box, and you just overtype. You just type in the names of the options. So this proposal, you might want to create not a bronze, silver, gold, but something specific to this client. A proposal that's very unique to this service. So the point I'm making, I think, Gina, you make a great point, Gina. I agree with you 100%. If I was getting a 20, 30, 40 grand fee, I would spend a bit more time and do something really impressive, and I wouldn't worry too much about, I'd want to use something different to make my proposal really professional, and get a designer involved, get someone like Stephen involved, because that can make a difference. Right, we have 2 questions. We've got 20 minutes left. We're going to have time for more questions. Nina says, it would be great to do a whole session on proposals with tips and best practices. Nina, thank you for that feedback. I have that in mind. Yes, I will do one on proposals. The one reason I'm just hanging on with that one is it's very likely the next development that will take place. And we're meeting developers on Monday. When we meet on Monday, we're going to be talking through we've got a whole bunch of ideas that they've spec'd out and priced out. And we're now, Sarah and I, are meeting with them to decide which ones we want in the next sprint, in the next release. And given that almost all of them are proposal related, then once they come out, we will do a session full on proposal where I'll walk you through. But in the meantime, Nina, if there's any specific things you want me to cover, then just ask the questions. Let me know, what do you want to know about proposals? What else can I walk through? So in these sessions, I'm quite happy to open up and walk you through a few things. Okay, let's move on to John. John says, actually, I must apologize. I have ignored any comments through social, but I don't think there's any questions. Just some comments. Valerie Chan said, I'm on YouTube, definitely no sound. That was ages ago. I'm going to guess that was all sorted. Okay. John says, can we add a section to the price which is dependent on an action happening, e.g. on payroll, set the price for normal, weekly, monthly, but have a price for starters, leavers, or maternity pay and funding? Right, John, that's going to stretch my brain here. Let me think this one through. Can we add a section to the price which is dependent on an action happening, e.g. on payroll, set the price for normal, weekly, monthly, but have a price for starters, leavers, or maternity pay? I think the answer, I'm not 100% sure exactly what you're trying to achieve, but I think the answer will be a yes. A lot of things can be done just thinking through the types of questions that you would want to ask. So let me see if I can unpick this one and think about what the questions are. So payroll, you want a price for normal weekly, you want a price for monthly, but have a price for starters, leavers, or maternity pay and funding. What I'm not sure about what you mean is, so let me show you the payroll model that's in here first, and then that might help with seeing what sort of things could be possible. So if I go to payroll, hit the edit button, so I'm behind the scenes, let me go into save and continue, go to the questions. So for the payroll, let me walk you through quickly some of how I set this up. just so you can see. And it's quite a big model, this one. There's a lot of questions in payroll. Payroll can be quite complex. So we have, how many employees do you have? If I just hit the edit button. So this one, this question uses a number of units. So the first question is how many employees, because clearly with payroll, probably the most important scope factor is how many employees. The more employees, the more pay slips we have to produce. And what this one does, so it's a value type question. In other words, it's looking for a number, how many employees, it's a value. The calculation type is number of units. So this is a little bit different to most of the other models. Usually, most of the time, your models want to start with an add, because add creates a number. And if your second question is a multiply, you need a number to multiply. I think someone was asking me via the Facebook group just this week, they can't get their model to work, and I think they had all multiplication questions. You can't start with multiply because there's nothing to multiply against. It'll just return 0. So you have to start with an add question, or at least you have to have an add question before you ever use a multiply or percentage increase. Okay, so you have to have an add. But you don't have to start with an add, because you could start with number of units. All number of units does, it has no impact on price. It simply stores a number, the number that the client puts in this case, the number of employees. So let's say they got 10, the software remembers they got 10 employees. So the next question is then the frequency one. Do you want it monthly or quarterly or whatever? So this one now is a drop-down box. How frequent do you want the payroll doing? And then you could put a series of frequencies. So monthly, weekly, fortnightly. You may have other frequencies, I don't know. Someone said they sometimes do bi-weekly payrolls. I'd never heard of that, but if that's the case, you just add it to the list. And this one is, this one has a calculation type of unit price. Okay, so this one, unit price, sometimes confuses people. It's a little bit more complex. I always recommend that if you're new to effective pricing, start off with just add and multiply. Okay, everyone knows what adding and multiply is. You're either going to add this number on or multiply this number as you build the price up. So stick with add and multiply most of the time. What unit price does is it goes hand in hand with number of units. You must ask a number of units question first. So we did that for number of employees. Now what happens with unit price? We're asked to select which number of units are we using? Well, the one we just asked, how many employees? And the reason for that, because what the software does here is it's going to apply. So for my drop-down box, if it's monthly, it's going to take the price as 60, but it's going to be 60 per employee. So because the previous question was a number of units and how many employees, and if it's 10, it's going to do 10 times 60, that's 600. And remember, that's 600 for the year, okay? You're going to divide that by 12 or 52 to get to a monthly or weekly price later on in the process, okay? So we've got what I've done here, John, is use a number question followed by a unit price question, which means what we're effectively doing is we're taking the price per employee, but it will differ depending on whether we're monthly, weekly, or fortnightly. Okay, so it's going to be 60 times number of employees for monthly, weekly is 260. So that's what we've done with those first two questions and how we've combined number of employees with the frequency. The next one is, do you want a physical printed payslip? This is simpler now. This is now a multiply, because if they want a physical payslip printing out, sending to the mail, I've added 40% on what multiplies by 1.4 to cover the cost of mailing and everything else. Obviously, you can change that, but that's a simple multiplication. We can have a multiplication here now because the combination of a unit price, number of units, and unit price has established a number that we can multiply. So we can't have a multiply question till we've had an add type or a unit price to establish a number. Right, John's come back and said, Let's see if this just clarifies. John says the price would be, say, 10 employees, but a price for setting up a starter and leaver. We have clients with seasonal workers. Okay. So I guess the question there, John, and just bear in mind, forgive me, I don't do payroll. I'm not a payroll expert. And so I'm not involved. I'm not aware of what processes you have to go through with payroll. I should switch back. But you've got a client where they've got seasonal workers, they have lots of starters, lots of leavers. I guess the issue here is going to be that the scope of the work is going to be seasonal and not predictable at the outset, because let's say the seasonal work is in the summertime and you're doing the pricing right now. They don't know right now, 3 months from now, how many seasonal people they'll need to take on. And so it might, I'm not sure how you would price that for future changes, but it might well be that what you do is your question might be based on, it could be a drop-down box. It could be typically, how many starters do you take on during the season? 1 to 5, 6 to 10. And so you could ask that question, and similarly leavers. And then what you could do, and I'm thinking out loud, John, bear in mind, I'm not a payroll expert. What you could do is you could create a separate section of questions. So we just add a brand new section, and you could have a section that's called, if I click add section, we could have starters and leavers. And then having got this new section, which will appear at the bottom by default, so you might want to move it, because remember, the order of the questions is the order of the math. But we could now ask some questions about starters and leavers. We could isolate it if we want to and do some little calculations there and add it in. And it may well be that we've already, up before that, the first section, we've priced the fact they've got 10 employees, but now what we want to do is build into it a price based on how many starters they expect they're going to take on when the season starts. I don't know, John, if that answers your question, because I'm just thinking in my mind, that's something that's, if I don't know, because we haven't got to that point in time, I wonder if this is something where it's more about managing expectations and saying that what we need to do is we will have a price per starter, and every month there may be a process whereby there's a change in the scope. Again, as I say, forgive me, John, I don't do payroll, so that's why I'm struggling a little bit. If you need some more specific help on that, send an email to Sarah, and set out what it is that you're trying to achieve, the sort of questions, type the math in plain English, what you're trying to add on, multiply, whatever. And then what we can do is we can work out how you'd build that into the software, the questions you'd ask, and so on. But hopefully that's kind of given you some inspiration. Right, Jean's come in with a question. How would we best set the payroll model to have one price for the first 4 employees with an add-on for each additional employee? Great question, Jean. Okay, yes, you can do that. Yes, you can do it. How would you do it the best way? I'm trying to think of an elegant way, a simple way, because mathematically there's some easy ways of doing it. So you could have a price for 1 to 4 people. So it's always going to be, I don't know, let's say that you want $10 a month, $120 a year times 4. Let's say you want a minimum of $600 to cover the first employees because there's setup costs and whatever. So it's not the best solution, but one thing that you could do is you could start off with a base price. So under this, after questions, the next thing in the workflow is expressing price, and you have the option to put a base price. So you might want to do 600. The base price, just so you know, the base price is the number that starts off all the calculations. By default, I always leave it as 0 because the first question can set the starting point in the calculations. So you don't need a base price, but there may be situations where you do. So that's one option. Another option might be, and I'm just having to, again, think aloud here of how you might do it. I mean, you could do it by number of employees could be a drop-down box. So rather than the number of units I've got here and value, we could change this to a drop-down box. And then our different options could be 1 to 4 employees, and then any other ranges or bands that you want. Of course, what you might be thinking of is you want it to be 1 to 4, then 5, then 6, then 7, then 8, then 9. And so you're going to end up with a long drop-down box, but that would be another way that you could do it. Is there another way? There's something telling me, Jean, there's another way of doing it. Nobody's ever asked this question before, so I'm just being creative here. And could you? Jean, I've never been asked this question before. I've never done it before, so I don't know is the answer. But I'm just wondering whether one way of doing it is to have a base price, as I showed you, for 1 to 4 employees. And then you have another section, and that section has a question that says yes or no. And the question is, do you have more than 4 employees, yes or no? And then you have a question that says, how many employees have you got? And if the answer to the first question is a yes or no, if the answer is no, well, you don't have to answer the rest of the question because you could put defaults in. You could just put in number of employees 4. I'm starting to think of another way of doing this. Can I think about it, Jean? I think there's a way of doing this. I think you could create a separate section. Question: Do you have more than 4 employees? Yes or no? And then, if the answer is yes, you then ask a value question: how many employees? Where you put in the number and it calculates the price. And the yes or no, I'm thinking, if they say no, then what it does is it possibly, but I've got to think through the order of the math here. If it's no, it multiplies by 0. So therefore and you isolate the section. So it therefore ignores that separate bit and just reverts to the base price, which is for the first 4 employees. I think you can do it, Jean. I've just never done it before. I think that's how you would do it. You create a new section, isolate the section, start off with the question, does this apply yes or no? If the answers are no, just make the rest of the questions default to with every question you can put a default answer. So you can just put default answers in, which means if in front of the client it says no, you just move on to the next page and the next section of questions. And if they say yes, you then answer them. I think you can do it. So, Jean, I like those sorts of questions because one of the things I found over the years is that a lot of people want to price things in ways that I've never considered. And usually there's an answer. Usually there's a way around it. With a bit of creativity around how you structure your questions and so on. We have 5 minutes left and I have no more questions. We might finish 5 minutes early. I've never done that before. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to let me know if you have got a final question. The trouble is when I say that, I get 20 questions coming. Let me just see if there's anything in, there's nothing come through on Facebook or YouTube that I can see as questions. So we might be done. If we're done, okay, we have 5 minutes left. It's Friday anyway, so it's the weekend. And if you're in the UK or South Africa, probably about now is the weekend. So very quickly, while just to finally, 2 things. Number 1, next week I have 2 sessions that you might want to come to. Same time as this. Actually, I have 3 sessions. So Wednesday is our usual monthly free training session, and the Wednesday session is something like, I should have rehearsed this, Sarah. I think we're talking about 5 ways to win clients with Facebook, because that was what people voted for last month. So that's Wednesday's session. Thursday is a very special session that I've never taught or not taught for a while before. If you've not yet blocked out next Thursday, do come along, because Thursday's session is I'm going to be talking about and giving you lots of tips and ideas on how to take advantage of this new economy we're in. The fact that we're all online, thanks to COVID and the pandemic, we're all talking to cameras, webcams more than ever before. And that means that it has an impact on the way that we communicate. And I know a lot of accountants and bookkeepers struggle with the not being confident in front of on an online meeting. And yet things like the lighting, the audio quality, all these things are critically important. Something I teach in price psychology is called the power of context. The power of context. The more professional you are, and that's why you have professional brochures and software and stuff, the more professional you come across, the more people see you as being higher quality, the more people expect to pay higher prices. So the way you present yourself is so, so important. And so what I'm doing on Thursday is I'm going to be teaching you some tips, ideas for being more confident, more professional, whether you're meeting one-to-one with clients on Zoom, one-to-one with prospects wanting to sign them up, or whether you want to move beyond that and start scaling your firm, because we can now use this technology, which I'm doing today, to help lots of people all at the same time. And that could even become at some point a business club where you charge a monthly fee. That could be extremely profitable. That's next Thursday. So I'm not planning to run it again for a while. And I also have a very special announcement because I'm launching something brand new as part of that. So that's Thursday's session. I strongly recommend you come along. And then Friday, we're going to have another one of these sessions. I need to catch up with David. I'm not sure what went wrong. It may be that next week we have David come on, and what he wants to talk about is, you may not be aware, but you've got custom keywords. Custom keywords means that you can create as many keywords as you want to put into your proposals. And what David has done is done that in a really creative way, because he also uses the proposal side of the software. Let me just turn that off. He uses the proposal side to do his engagement letters. And he said, and this feature is something he requested a couple of years back, because he wants to do his engagement letters through the software, as well as fixed price agreements, proposals, and he wanted more flexibility with keywords. So he's going to show some of the creativity with keywords and how he builds them into his proposals, how he does engagement letters. So that was going to be today. I really apologize. And I apologize, David, if you're listening, that we couldn't actually get connected. So let's do that. Next Friday's session is going to have that as its theme. Let me know if there's any other themes that you want. Nina wants us to cover proposals in detail. We will definitely do that, probably after next development. The other one I might do is show you how to build a model from the ground up. That could be the one we do in 2 weeks' time, where I just show you how you build for something that's not really set up, something like training or something. We'll pick something and I'll show you how to build a model from the ground up. But if you want any requests, just let me know. Okay, it is almost on the hour. There's no more questions. So thank you so much for coming along. Thanks for all the great questions that you've given me. Have an awesome weekend. And I will see you hopefully on at least one of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of next week. Take care. Goodbye for now.